The death system and cultural context. Every culture has a death system. It's just the overall makeup of the who, what, when, where, and why, and how of people dying, and it varies from culture to culture and over time. One component of the death system is the people who die, the people who mourn them, people in the funeral industry or the clergy, and people who witness a lot of death as part of their work, such as firefighters, police, and nurses. Another component is the places or contexts in which we die and mourn, such as hospitals, hospices, funeral homes, cemeteries, and memorials. There are times that various people and cultures associate with death, such as holidays like Day of the Dead or anniversaries of disasters like 9/11. There are often special ways that these events are remembered and the people involved are honored. Many objects in a culture are associated with death, such as caskets or urns, colors or clothing. For example, in the United States, the color black is associated with death and usually worn at funerals, but in China, the color white is associated with death. And there are symbols or symbolic behaviors that cultures may connect with death, such as a skull and crossbones, or religious rites and rituals performed when someone is dead or dying. There are cultural variations in how death and dying are characterized. People are more aware of death during times of war, famine, and plague. In places and times when these things are more prevalent, death is an ever present idea. By contrast, in the United States, it's not uncommon for people to be adults by the time they have to talk about death or experience the death of someone close. In this culture, many people aren't comfortable discussing death and may actively resist it. A person who has just been diagnosed with a potentially fatal illness might want to discuss things such as end of life care or funeral arrangements, and their spouse or family might go, "No, no, no, don't talk about that. You'll be okay. Think positive." Okay, but it's good to be prepared. There's nothing wrong with talking about it. Most societies have prevailing philosophical beliefs about death, such as ideas about why death happens and what, if anything, happens after death. And people vary in their fear of death. Some people embrace death as a fitting end to a fulfilling life, while others might be terrified of death. In fact, in the United States, we're very strong death avoiders and death deniers. We do all sorts of things to minimize the presence of death in our minds. We try to make the dead look as lifelike as possible for funerals through embalming and makeup. We say things like someone passed on or passed away instead of died. To say he died or she died often sounds a little too harsh and direct to our ears. We look for a fountain of youth, pills or treatments that promise to miraculously extend our youthful energy or appearance. I recently noticed how pronounced the laugh lines are around my eyes, how pronounced they've become. And while I personally love them because I feel like it's an indication of all the times that I've given genuine smiles, some people might be horrified at these signs of aging and immediately start shelling out money for line-reducing eye creams. The medical community's emphasis on prolonging biological life rather than on diminishing human suffering is another example of death denial. We often do everything in our power to keep someone alive for even one more hour or one more day, even if it's clear that all it's doing is prolonging the inevitable and causing pain and suffering in the meantime. Death-denying societies tend to reject and isolate the elderly, who may remind us of death. And many societies have adopted the concept of a pleasant and rewarding afterlife, allowing us to perceive ourselves as functionally immortal. Changing historical circumstances have altered when and how people experience death. A couple hundred years ago, half of all children died before the age of 10, and usually one parent had died by the time a child grew up. Now, it's highly unexpected for someone to die until they're much older. In 1900, most people died at home, cared for family members. But as families have become more mobile and as the number of aging people has surpassed the number of younger people to care for them, more people are dying in nursing homes and hospitals, cared for by medical professionals. As a result, death in general has become something that tends to happen elsewhere, and people aren't exposed to it. Most of us in the United States, unless we work in healthcare or emergency services, have never actually been present at the moment that someone has died.